So Simple tutorial. Good morning students. Welcome to SST So Simple tutorial. In the previous class we had read about the Soviet system. We also discussed the problems with the system. The Soviet system lagged behind the West in technological developments as compared to the West. The military expenditure incurred by the Soviet government was quite high and was draining the resources. People had no freedom of speech. Their living standards was quite low. Agriculture was not in good state. At this time of crisis and people's dissatisfaction, Mikhail Gorbachev was elected the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Soviet Union in 1985. The post of General Secretary used to be the most powerful post in USSR. The General Secretary was considered the leader of the Communist Party. The General Secretary solely controlled the party directly. Since the party had monopoly on political power, he had the executive control of the Soviet government. Okay. Gorbachev was an open and reform-minded person. Although a communist, he believed that certain reforms were necessary for survival. He wanted to democratize and reform the Soviet Union. He also wanted to normalize relations with the West. Externally, as soon as Gorbachev became reluctant to enforce the earlier policy of intervention in the internal affairs of its East European allies, the political changes in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany gathered momentum. People of these countries began to protest against their governments and the Soviet control. But this time USSR under Gorbachev did not intervene. Gorbachev refused to use force and allowed people to choose their own governments and ways of life. Eventually, starting with Poland, countries began to break away from Soviet blocs. Now let us see what happened within the USSR. Gorbachev introduced his reforms through the policy of glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost, my dear students, means openness. Through glasnost, he allowed the people freedom of speech. It allowed people to criticize the state, something that was previously unthinkable. He allowed them freedom of information. People were given the right to get full and correct information about public issues. He aimed to end censorship by giving more freedom to media. Newspapers could criticize the government. He also cleared way for multi-party system in the Soviet Union. That means parties other than the communist parties could participate in the elections. Perestroika means restructuring. With perestroika, he decentralized decision making to improve the economy. It was a state program to open up the economy and put it at par with the capitalist West. Through perestroika, he was trying to bring a hybrid communist capitalist system where the state would still control the directions of the economy while allowing market forces to dictate some production and development decisions. Thus, through his reforms, he wanted to make the Soviet Union more democratic and revive economy. So these policies modernized Soviet Union, but they also pushed non-Russian nationalists for independence. It caused separatist movements among the non-Russian republics to grow. In March 1990, Lithuania declared its independence and became the first republic to part ways with USSR. Then the agitation also spread to Estonia and Latvia. In June 1990, Russian parliament also declared its sovereignty and the intention to establish a democratic state within a liberalized Soviet Union. Now, the economic and political reforms initiated by Gorbachev within the country was not being liked by the leaders of the Communist Party itself. The reforms were opposed by them. Thereafter, the party hardliners staged a coup in 1991 attempting to remove Gorbachev from power. Coup, my dear students, means a sudden violent overthrowing of a government. The word is spelled COUP, but its pronunciation is coup. Gorbachev was placed under house arrest and was pressurized to resign, which he refused to do. At this time, Boris Yeltsin made his entry. He had just won the election of the Russian Republic. Yeltsin, along with his supporters, stepped in against the coup. He called on the people of Russia to strike and protest the coup. People who were living under the authoritative regimes right from the period of Stalin had got the taste of freedom. They did not want to see those days again. They demonstrated their dislike for the rigidities of the communist system. So, they did not go along with the rebels. Tanks appeared on the streets of Moscow. Soldiers tried to arrest Yeltsin, but people blocked their way to the parliament building. You can see here Yeltsin climbed over a tank and spoke to the soldiers and people outside the parliament building. He was urging the troops not to turn against the people and rather condemn the coup. The soldiers backed off. So, when thousands of people took to the streets and demonstrated, the coup collapsed in 2 days. Gorbachev was released. Yeltsin emerged as a national hero. But as a result of this turmoil, the government in Moscow lost its influence, and many other republics proclaimed independence in the following days and months. The secession of the Baltic states was recognized in September 1991. In December 1991, under the leadership of Yeltsin, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus annulled the 1922 Treaty of the Creation of USSR and declared that the Soviet Union was disbanded. The Communist Party of the Soviet Union was banned. Capitalism and democracy were adopted as the basis for the post-Soviet republics. These three states also recognized each other's independence and created the Commonwealth of Independent States to replace the Soviet Union. With the exception of the Baltic states, all the former Soviet republics joined the Commonwealth of Independent States. The Baltic states later on joined the European Union and then the NATO. Later on, Georgia and Ukraine also disassociated themselves from the Commonwealth of Independent States. So now, when Soviet Union ceased to exist, Gorbachev resigned as the president of the Soviet Union on the day of Christmas 1991. The Soviet hammer and sickle flag was lowered from outside the Kremlin for the last time and was replaced by the pre-revolutionary red, blue and white tricolor of Russia. Thus came the demise of once mighty superpower, the Soviet Union. Now the next issue was the question of succession of USSR. Russia was accepted as the successor state to the USSR. Russia accepted all the international treaties and commitments of the USSR. That meant Russia took the responsibility for everything that the Soviet Union did, from weapon control and disposal to the international debts. Russia inherited the Soviet seat in the United Nations Security Council. At the time of dissolution of Soviet Union, Soviet nuclear weapons were deployed in four new republics of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus and Kazakhstan. These four states then agreed to join the NPT treaty, with Russia as the successor state to the Soviet Union as a nuclear state. So before we wind up the class, let us see the achievements of Gorbachev. Gorbachev tried to reform the USSR, though he did not succeed. He carried out his reforms with good intentions, but could not carry it to the logical conclusions. Students, it was Gorbachev who had realized the futility of Afghan occupation. So he pulled Soviet Union out of Afghanistan in 1989. One of the most important achievements of Gorbachev was ending arms race with America. He and President Reagan agreed a deal to slash with their nuclear arsenal. His efforts to normalize relations with the US, especially Reagan, has left a mark in history. His policies led to the end of Cold War, the demise of communism across Central and Eastern Europe, and of course, unfortunate disintegration of the Soviet Union. In Russia, still there are people to blame him for the debacle of his reforms and humiliation of Soviet Union against the US. But outside of Russia, however, he is seen as a pragmatic leader who had the sense and sensitivity to end the Cold War. Students, the United States, which was determined since 1947 to contain communism, however, did not know that it would be able to defeat communism in the country of its origin. With this, let me stop here. I hope you have understood the topic well. In the next class, we will take up the next topic: why did the Soviet Union disintegrate? Till then, read your textbook and have a nice time. Thank you.